Welcome to Last Week Beyond the Firewall, the show where I break down the latest stories in cybersecurity, AI, and cutting-edge tech. If it's your first time here, my name is Jason. I'm an IT operations specialist, and I'm passionate about educating everyday people just like you about staying secure in the modern digital world. This show is designed to keep you informed, engaged, and empowered, whether you're a seasoned professional or just curious about cybersecurity. Each week, I handpick some of the most interesting news stories to discuss with you. I base my choices off relevant topics that I feel more people need to know about. You'll not only understand why each story matters, but my hope is you'll walk away with strategies to protect yourself, your family, and your organization. If you've ever wondered how emerging threats like quantum computing, AI-driven attacks, or data breaches impact your daily life, then you're in the right place. Stick around, because today's final story will challenge how you think about the future and prepare you for what's next. With that said, it's time to venture beyond the firewall. All right, the first story this week takes us to Washington, D.C. President Biden is signing an executive order to beef up security standards for federal agencies and contractors. I know, finally, am I right? But let's be honest, this feels more like locking up your house after a thief has taken your car and maxed out your credit cards. Like, it's cool that it's happening, but I feel like people have been calling for this for a while now. Let's rewind a bit. Recent cyber attacks on federal agencies like the Treasury breach we talked about last week have made one thing painfully clear. The government's cybersecurity defenses are a patch job, held together with duct tape and good intentions. State-sponsored hackers, especially the ones from China, have known this and are exploiting these cracks with precision. So let's talk about what's actually in this executive order. Its focus is to put more scrutiny on vendors supplying software to federal agencies. From now on, they'll need to prove they're not taking shortcuts with security. This means strong encryption, secure token management, and real-time monitoring. If they don't meet these new standards, they're out of the running for federal contracts. Now, this all sounds like a step in the right direction, but let's not kid ourselves. This is just another reactive step in a long line of reactive steps. It took high-profile breaches and years of ignored warnings to get to this point. Think about it. SolarWinds wasn't yesterday's news. It was 2 years ago. And only now we're seeing meaningful action. The reality is, the government moves at the speed of bureaucracy. And in cybersecurity, that's like showing up to a Formula One race in a Power Wheels. But let's give credit where it's due. Well, kind of. The executive order does focus on some big pain points, like software supply chains, which have been a hacker's playground for too long. Advanced Persistent Threats, or APTs, are mentioned as well, with an emphasis on real-time monitoring to catch these attackers in the act. This will lead to more reliant and timely attribution. The flip side is, APTs aren't just a technical problem. They're also a people problem. No amount of encryption can stop someone from falling for a well-crafted phishing email. And then there's the compliance concerns. Small vendors in this industry, they're going to struggle. Meeting these new requirements isn't cheap, and that cost is going to get passed down somewhere. Probably to taxpayers. This will end up being great news for the big players who already have the resources. They will adapt easily and consolidate even more of the market, snatching up those smaller businesses. It's a classic story of government. Regulations, while well-meaning, also have some predictable side effects, mostly consolidating the wealth to the big corporations. Now, don't get me wrong, raising the bar for cybersecurity is absolutely necessary. But this executive order feels like an afterthought, like trying to control a symptom rather than looking for a root cause. It's not fixing the underlying problem of why the door was wide open in the first place. And let's not ignore the fact that while the US is focused on playing catch-up, adversaries like China are running circles around us. They're innovating their cyber capabilities faster than we're patching our vulnerabilities. So while this order is a step forward, it's not going to magically level the playing field. Later in the episode, I'll break down how these strategies, when applied correctly, translate to individuals and businesses. Because, let's face it, waiting for the government to fully secure anything is like waiting for dial-up to load a YouTube video. You're better off taking matters into your own hands. But for now, let's move on to a story that might make you even more skeptical about where things are headed in the world of cybersecurity. Now, let's talk about the one thing your favorite apps probably aren't telling you. Your location data isn't just useful for navigating to the nearest coffee shop. It's a goldmine for hackers. This week, millions of users' sensitive location data from apps like Spotify, Tinder, Candy Crush, and Vinted was stolen and dumped on a Russian cybercrime forum. If that doesn't make you want to rethink hitting allow on every app permission request, I don't know what will. Here's how it happened. Hackers exploited vulnerabilities in these apps' APIs. API stands for Application Programming Interface. If you aren't familiar with this term, these are the invisible pipes that let your app talk to its servers. But when those pipes have leaks, your data flows out for anyone to grab. And in this case, the data wasn't just usernames or email addresses. It was detailed location information. The kind that can map your daily routines, reveal your favorite hangouts, and if you haven't already guessed, they can pinpoint your home address as well. If you aren't terrified yet, this kind of information is a stalker's dream and a nightmare for anyone concerned about privacy. Imagine getting a phishing email referencing places you've been or times you've commuted. Creepy, right? And that's just the start. This data could be used for identity theft, targeted attacks, or even physical threats. The implications go deeper than just personal risks. Companies like Spotify and Tinder are now facing what's likely to be a PR disaster. Regulatory scrutiny is a given, whether it's from the FTC or GDPR authorities in Europe, and you can imagine lawsuits are almost certainly to follow. But the real damage here is to user trust. When people start questioning whether they can rely on these apps to keep their data secure, there's a problem you can't fix with a quick apology tweet. And it's not just these companies. This breach puts the entire app industry on notice. The heavy reliance on APIs prioritize speed and functionality, but often neglect robust security. If companies don't start tightening up on how they handle location data, breaches like this will only become more frequent and more devastating. So what can you do to protect yourself? First, take a hard look at which apps you've granted location access to. Here's a hot take. Candy Crush does not need to know where you are. Go into your device settings, review those permissions, and disable any that aren't absolutely necessary. Next, consider enabling two-factor authentication on apps where it's available. This isn't a silver bullet, but it's a solid extra layer of security. And if you're really concerned about keeping your location data private, a VPN can help mask your IP address, making it harder for anyone to track you. What about the companies? Well, the affected apps haven't said much yet, which, let's be real, isn't surprising. They'll investigate, issue statements, and promise to do better, but it's the same old song and dance we've seen before. The real question is whether they'll actually invest in the kind of API security audits and encryption protocols needed to prevent this from happening again. Here's the bottom line. This breach is yet another wake-up call for users. Stop hitting the snooze button and get the hint already. You need to take your privacy seriously. It's also a challenge to the entire tech industry to get serious about data security, because if they don't, users will take their data and their trust elsewhere. Later in the show, I'll share some practical tools to protect your data and make sure you're not the next victim of an app's sloppy security practices. Okay, let's take a step back for a moment. When you think of a scammer, what comes to mind? Maybe a poorly worded email from a prince asking for a wire transfer? Or perhaps a shady pop-up offering free gift cards? Well, those days are gone. The new scammer? It's not even human. It's an algorithm. AI-driven email scams are rewriting the rulebook for phishing. They're slick, they're smart, and they're terrifyingly effective. These scams aren't just throwing darts in the dark anymore. They're playing 4D chess with your data. Here's how they operate. Imagine an AI scouring your public online presence, your Instagram captions, your LinkedIn posts, even the slightly embarrassing tweet from 3 years ago. It collects everything it can find, pieces it all together, and it crafts an email that doesn't just look legit. It feels like it's personally written for you. And let's be honest, we've all had that moment of hesitation when an email looks just a little bit too real. It really makes you second guess. Maybe it's your bank asking you to verify a transaction, or a coworker sending you an urgent request. These AI scams thrive in that moment of doubt. But what makes these scams especially dangerous isn't just their personalization. It's their scalability. AI can pump out thousands of these unique, tailored emails in minutes. Each one customized, each one designed to bypass the mental defenses that might have flagged a more generic phishing attempt. Here's where it gets wild, though. They're not stopping at text. Some of these scams now come with deepfake voice or video attachments. Imagine getting a voicemail from what sounds like your boss asking for your login credentials. It's like cybercrime meets Hollywood special effects. And it's not just individuals who are at risk. Businesses are a prime target. A compromised email account can act as a golden ticket into corporate networks. Think ransomware attacks, stolen trade secrets, or worse, complete system takeovers. But let's talk about the deeper issue here. This isn't just a cybersecurity problem, it's a psychological one. AI phishing exploits trust, urgency, and fear. These aren't random spam emails. They're meticulously designed traps to play on human emotions, and that's what makes them so hard to resist. So, you may be asking, how do we fight back? Well, for individuals, it starts with awareness. You should be skeptical of any email that asks for sensitive information, no matter how convincing it looks. Verify directly with the sender through a separate channel. And for the love of all things secure, stop reusing your passwords. For businesses, this is a wake-up call. Phishing simulators, advanced email security tools like Mimikatz or Proofpoint, and strict role-based access controls aren't just nice-to-haves, they're essential moving forward. And let's not forget about real-time monitoring for unusual account behavior. Here's the bottom line. The best defense is reducing the data that these scammers have access to. The less personal information you put out there, the harder it is for an AI to craft a believable con. At the end of the day, this isn't just about protecting your inbox. It's about staying one step ahead of a technology that's rapidly evolving. Email scams are only the beginning. There are certainly new and unknown AI-driven attacks on the horizon. And if I've learned anything in cybersecurity, it's that the moment you get complacent is the moment you get caught. Coming up next, we'll dive into a story that had everyone wondering how they were going to fill their hours of the day. Alright, let's talk about the digital bombshell that had Gen Z ready to jump off a bridge last week. The TikTok app, the app that brought us viral dances, questionable pranks, and way too many life hacks, was officially banned from US app stores. Yes, you heard that right. On January 19th, TikTok got the boot after the Supreme Court upheld its removal due to national security concerns. And, as you'd expect, the fallout has been chaotic, messy, and very, very loud. Luckily, or unluckily, the app was restored after about 12 hours. Even though the ban was short-lived, there is an interesting story behind it. First off, let's look at why this happened. For years, US officials have been ringing alarm bells about TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, and its ties to the Chinese government. The fear? That your dancing videos and meme compilations are a backdoor for Beijing to collect sensitive user data and potentially conduct espionage. ByteDance has always denied this, claiming US users' data is safely stored outside of China, but the government wasn't buying it. So after months of political back and forth, the Supreme Court ruled to ban the app. Now if you're thinking, why does this feel so sudden? Well, it's not, really. This has been building for years, but like most government decisions, it took a series of high-profile events and public pressure to finally force action. And when the hammer came down, it hit hard. TikTok disappeared from the Apple and Google app stores, leaving 170 million users scrambling. The backlash was immediate and intense. Content creators, many of whom rely on TikTok for their livelihood, were furious. Some started migrating to platforms like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, while others took to social media to voice their anger. In Wisconsin, things took a darker turn. A 19-year-old allegedly set fire to the office of Congressman Glenn Grothman, a vocal supporter of the ban. Let that sink in for a moment. A platform known for viral trends and comedy skits has now become a flashpoint for arson. But just when you thought this story couldn't get any wilder, President-elect Donald Trump stepped in. Hours after the ban, he proposed a 90-day extension to keep TikTok running while ByteDance and the US regulators figured out a compromise. One potential solution, a joint venture where ByteDance would cede 50% ownership to American companies. It's a classic case of kick the can down the road, but at least it buys time for negotiations. So what does this mean for the rest of us? For starters, this isn't just about TikTok. The tension between the US and China over tech dominance has been growing for years. The ban is being framed as a national security win, but it's also a warning shot for other foreign-owned apps. If you're a tech company with questionable ties, you might want to start cleaning house. For the average user, this is a perfect time to understand the risks of sharing personal data on platforms where ownership and accountability can get pretty murky. For the other social media companies, this could be a game changer. With so much scrutiny over TikTok, platforms like YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels have a golden opportunity to grab some of the market share. But can they really replicate TikTok's unique algorithm-driven magic? Well, that's the billion-dollar question. Let's also address the elephant in the room. Did this ban actually solve the problem? On paper, banning TikTok might protect US data from being funneled into the hands of a foreign government. But in practice, the ecosystem is still full of apps collecting way more information than they need to. If anything, this highlights the need for a broader tech regulation. It's not enough to single out TikTok. There needs to be a systematic approach to data privacy and security across the board. And let's not forget the precedent this sets. By banning TikTok, the government has effectively declared that no app, no matter how popular, is untouchable if it's deemed a national security risk. That's a slippery slope, with implications for freedom of expression, economic opportunities, and how we define secure moving into the future. Later in the episode, I'll share strategies for managing your online presence and protecting your data in an era where platforms can disappear overnight. Because if TikTok can go from dominating culture to vanishing from the app stores, which app is next? Let me set the stage for our next story. For months, without anyone's knowledge, Over 4,200 computers across the US are quietly infected with one of the most sophisticated pieces of malware out there, PlugX. This isn't your run-of-the-mill virus that clogs up grandma's laptop. PlugX is a remote access Trojan, better known as RAT. This allows hackers to take control of a system, no questions asked. And it's not some random group of basement hackers running the show. This was the work of Mustang Panda, a Chinese state-sponsored hacking group that's been wreaking havoc since at least 2014. So how do you fight back against something so big? Well, this is where the FBI steps in. With a little help from their friends in France, in a rare and surgical operation, the FBI took control of PlugX's command and control servers. These are the digital nerve centers that give hackers their reach. Once the FBI had the reins, they flipped the script. Instead of letting PlugX steal more data, they sent a self-destruct command to the malware, effectively wiping it from over 4,200 infected systems. Here's the kicker. They did it without breaking those computers. Now, this wasn't some rogue operation. The FBI had to jump through legal hoops, securing 9 warrants from the Eastern District of Pennsylvania to authorize the takedown. These warrants let them step into infected systems remotely and surgically remove PlugX. The operation wrapped up on January 3rd, marking the end of a months-long effort to clean up this mess. Let's take a moment to really appreciate what this means. First, it's a massive win for national security. PlugX wasn't just snooping around your Spotify playlist. It posed a real threat to sensitive information, critical infrastructures, and by extension, the rest of the United States. Mustang Panda didn't just target US systems either. Their reach extended across Europe, Asia, and even Chinese dissidents, making this a truly global threat. Secondly, this operation is a shining example of international collaboration done right. The US and France coordinated seamlessly to identify, infiltrate, and dismantle PlugX's infrastructure. It's a reminder that cybercrime doesn't respect borders, so neither can our response. But here's where things get a little murky. I'm talking about the ethics of it all. The FBI basically just remotely accessed over 4,000 private systems to delete malware. Sure, they did have warrants, and yes, it did protect us. But the question lingers, how far is too far? What happens the next time law enforcement takes similar measures, and who decides when it's justified? PlugX's takedown is a big win, no doubt about it. But it's also a wake-up call. Mustang Panda and groups like it aren't going to just pack up and call it quits because their malware got nuked. They'll adapt, they'll innovate, and they'll come back even stronger. For the US, this is a reminder to take cybersecurity seriously. Just because PlugX is gone doesn't mean we're in the clear. If anything, it's a sign that the threats are getting more sophisticated and we can't afford to stay complacent. Later in the episode, I'll share specific steps and tools you can take to secure your systems against attacks like this one. Because at the end of the day, the best defense starts with us. Alright, let's dive into our last story of the day. Last week, cybersecurity researchers uncovered a malvertising campaign targeting Google Ads users. Here's how it worked. Imagine you're managing your business's advertising budget, searching for Google Ads resources online. You click on what looks like a legitimate ad. It's professional, polished, and seems to be straight from Google itself. But instead of landing on a helpful page, you're redirected to a phishing site hosted on Google's own domains. That's right, the attackers use Google sites to make their trap look even more authentic. These phishing pages were devilishly convincing, asking for your Google account credentials and even your two-factor authentication codes. Once you've handed over that information, the attackers took control of your Google Ads account. From there, it was a free-for-all. They drained advertising budgets and used the compromised accounts to run their own malicious ad campaigns, spreading malware or phishing links even further. Think about the ripple effect here. One stolen account leads to hundreds, maybe thousands of malicious ads. Those ads lead to more phishing victims, and the cycle continues. It's not just a financial hit, it's a systematic exploitation of trust, using Google's own platform as both the lure and the weapon. Let's not ignore the psychological aspect. Google Ads is one of the most trusted tools for businesses. It's where companies put their money to grow, to reach new customers. When the trust is exploited, it's more than just a hack. It's a betrayal that shakes confidence in the entire system. So, what can we learn from all this? First, vigilance is key. Always navigate to Google Ads directly through the official URL. Never go through ads or third-party links, no matter how legitimate they seem. Second, you should scrutinize URLs before entering your credentials. A slight misspelling or unfamiliar structure is all it takes to tip you off to a phishing attempt. And here's the thing, vigilance can only get you so far. To really protect yourself, you need to go beyond the basics. You should enable two-factor authentication using hardware security keys. These keys add an extra layer of security that's nearly impossible for hackers to bypass, even if they have your credentials. For businesses managing ad budgets, this is a wake-up call to review your access controls. Limit who can make changes on your accounts and monitor spending activity for anything unusual. Don't underestimate the value of employee training. Make sure everyone on your team knows how to spot phishing attempts, especially when they're as sophisticated as this. This campaign also raises bigger questions about platform responsibility. Google's hosting of these phishing pages, whether intentional or not, is a glaring issue. It's a reminder that even tech giants need to step up their game when it comes to monitoring their ecosystems for abuse. The takeaway here? Well, trust is a double-edged sword. It's what makes platforms like Google Ads so effective, but it's also what makes them prime targets. Later in the episode, I'll share tools and strategies you can use to guard against these kind of attacks and ensure your business and your budget stay secure. For now, let's wrap things up with some actionable steps and takeaways from today's stories. Alright, we've tackled some massive stories today, from government initiatives to cutting-edge scams and devastating breaches. Let's break it down story by story and make sure that you're leaving with some actionable steps to protect yourself and your organization. First up, we have Biden's executive order. The executive order emphasizes securing software supply chains and protecting against state-sponsored threats. So even if you're not in the federal sector, these principles still apply. Audit your software. Whether you're running a business or managing personal systems, stick with vendors that prioritize secure software development. Look for certifications or compliance with frameworks like NIST. Also, you should implement zero trust architecture. Minimize the trust given to any system or user. Tools like Okta and Duo Security can help enforce role-based access controls. Finally, regularly monitor your logs. Platforms like Splunk and Elastic Security can help identify anomalies before they escalate into major breaches. The breach exposing location data from popular apps like Spotify, Tinder, and Candy Crush highlight the need for careful app management. You should always limit location tracking. Disable location permissions for apps unless they're absolutely necessary. Check your device's app settings regularly. You should also audit your apps. If an app no longer serves a purpose, delete it. Fewer apps means fewer vulnerabilities. You never really know what the app could be doing in the background. Finally, use a VPN. A virtual private network like NordVPN or ExpressVPN can mask your location data, adding an extra layer of privacy. Next, AI-powered phishing emails are a growing threat, exploiting trust and personalization. Here's how to stay one step ahead. Verify before you click. Always confirm the sender's identification through a trusted channel. Even a quick phone call can save you from a phishing scam. Next, employ anti-phishing tools. Like I mentioned earlier, platforms like Proofpoint or Mimikatz can help detect and block phishing attempts. Also, educate yourself and your team. Phishing simulations and regular cybersecurity training are essential for individuals and businesses alike. If you're interested in some new options for cybersecurity training, throw a comment down below. I'm working on some new things for small businesses that I'd love to talk to you about. Next, we have the TikTok ban that reminds us how geopolitical tensions can intersect with digital privacy and freedom. Whether or not TikTok is your platform, here's a couple of things for you to know. You should really think about what you're sharing. Use tools like Jumbo Privacy to monitor what data your apps are collecting and sharing. Also, you should back up your content. Creators, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread your presence across platforms like YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and Snapchat Spotlight to stay connected with your audience. Finally, you should practice digital minimalism. Limit app permissions to only what's necessary. For example, disable location tracking unless absolutely required. The FBI's PlugX takedown is a win, but the threat of state-sponsored malware is far from over. Here's how to fortify your systems. Keep your systems updated. Regular patching is the easiest way to close vulnerabilities. Make it automatic where possible. You should also invest in advanced security tools. Products like CrowdStrike Falcon or ESET Endpoint Security offer real-time protection and threat analysis. Finally, you should prepare for incidents. Businesses should maintain an up-to-date incident response playbook to guide actions during a breach. If you don't have one, leave a comment down below. I'm working on one right now, and this is a great opportunity for you to join the waitlist. The Malvertising Campaign targeting Google Ads shows us how attackers exploit trust. Here's how to stay safe. Bookmark your trusted sites. Always access Google Ads or similar tools directly through their official URLs. Avoid clicking on ads or search results. Secure your accounts. Enable two-factor authentication, especially with a hardware key like YubiKey, for robust account protection. Finally, scan suspicious links. Tools like VirusTotal and URL Void can analyze URLs before you click. Cybersecurity threats are evolving faster than ever, but with the right strategies, you can stay ahead. Whether it's fortifying your accounts, securing devices, or simply being cautious about where you click, every step matters. I hope that these tips have given you something valuable that you can take away with you today. Well, that wraps up the news for this week. There are many other stories that didn't make the list, but are worth examining. If you'd like to find out about them, you can head over to my LinkedIn page. I have a daily newsletter that briefly covers developing stories as they come up. It's about a 5-minute read, and it comes out each morning at 7:15. It's the perfect complement to your morning coffee. If you found today's episode valuable, you'll love my Substack, Beyond the Firewall, where I showcase my unique style of writing. I tackle many intriguing topics from the perspective of an investigative journalist. Some of my most popular publications are in-depth exposés of some of the most influential hacker groups of the past few decades. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, head over and subscribe today. The link is below. The best part about doing this is the community interaction and collaboration. So I'd love to hear from you. Which story caught your attention the most? Or, is there a topic you'd like me to tackle next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, and your input could shape a future episode. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, and it really does help me grow the community of curious minds passionate about cybersecurity and AI. Until next time, stay informed, stay secure, and stay curious.